Hello, welcome to today's webinar. My name is Sandra Wild Sutton, and I am an occupational therapist. And next to me is Krista, and she is a speech therapist. Today, we're going to be talking about normal development from the ages of 2 to 5, focusing on a lot of those skills that children need to participate in preschool and get ready for kindergarten. So we want to welcome you to TheraPlace Family of Companies, and please sit back and enjoy. If you have any questions, hold them to the end. We will be willing to answer any questions that you have, and there is time allotted at the end of this presentation. Krista, you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Hi, I'm Krista Kolb, and I'm a speech and language pathologist, like Sandy said, and I've been in the profession for almost 7 years now. In addition to what Sandy said about our webinar, we're going to have a lot of pictures and videos and give you some great examples throughout the webinar. So please enjoy.
It takes us a minute to just switch over to our first slide, and then we'll get started. Okay. So like we said, we're going to be talking about normal development from ages 2 to 5, and our objectives today are to learn what skills children need to be successful in preschool and kindergarten, discover the skills that children should have in order to gain independence in their environment, both at school and at home, and determine the play and language skills that should be developing at certain ages so that you have a sense at home what kind of skills that your children should have, so that you can help facilitate that in your play and in your engagement with your children.
We're going to dive into our typical behaviors of our toddlers, our 2 to 3-year-olds. So this child is going to display a lot of shyness, especially with strangers and people that they don't know in an outside environment, out in the community, not in your house. If you have a 2-year-old or have a child who is over the age of 2, you know exactly and agree with this next one. They say no a lot, but they eventually do give in. They're going to try to model you as their caregiver or their parent and experiment with adult activities. They may take the vacuum cleaner or the broom and sweep, or take their play tools and try to fix something around the house. Frustration and tantrums really start to peak at this age. This is their terrible twos. You're going to see them procrastinate a lot, especially during meal times and at naps, and when you ask them to simply do something. They're going to take ownership of their toys and their possessions, and they're going to say, it's mine, it's mine, it's mine. And they're going to start to understand the difference of men and women, boys and girls. They're going to stay away from common dangers. They're going to know that the stove is hot and that maybe we should not touch it. They're going to develop food preferences. They're going to start to have an opinion whether they like something or not. But it's also important to still present them with nutritious foods. And they're going to start to handle fragile things really carefully. They're going to know if something's going to break easily. And then by age 3, they're going to start to separate from you a little bit easier. They're going to start to show independence and build confidence by maybe running ahead of you or not wanting to hold your hand. And they're going to try to experiment with things on their own. And it's okay to let them try things. Try to let them pour milk on their cereal or put toothpaste on their toothbrush. They're going to begin to obey and respect simple rules around the house. They're going to be very demanding, so those terrible twos will start to transition into age 3. They're going to have a lot of different difficulties with transitions, especially when they're doing something fun, like leaving the playground or a birthday party, or simply just stopping playing while you want them to come eat. They're going to participate in circle time games and interactive games. They're going to have so much pride in their achievements, and they want you to know how proud they are. So show them how proud you are by maybe putting their picture up on the refrigerator. And they're going to insist on doing things all by themselves.
This is such an important age for them to gain that independence, and that's why it's accompanied by a lot of temper tantrums because they're starting to assert themselves. They're starting to have those skills to assert themselves, and just show you what their likes and dislikes are. And so we talk about the terrible twos, but many times three is a lot harder, because they're building so many skills in being independent. During this time, you really want to expose your children to a lot of different play activities. Things like Play-Doh, finger painting, start giving them crayons and markers. This is the time when you give them paper, they should start to know that they need to color on the paper and not on the table. Um, be careful though, because they're still thinking that maybe the walls are a fun place to paint from. So think about your play area when you set up these areas. It's okay to get one of those, throwaway tablecloths, put it on your kitchen table and allow them to explore. They're starting to develop what we call discrimination of their tactile system when they build and play with these things. So it's really important to give them those kinds of experiences. Having containers to pour and dump, a sandbox outside. If you don't have the availability to a sandbox, put rice in a container and play with that. Put beans in a container, play with that. Sand and water play is really a lot of fun for kids at this age, and they start to really enjoy that kind of play. Also, start to expose your kids to books. This is a great time when they can start to learn to point at pictures, sit and attend for longer periods of time, to be able to follow along with a book. This is a time too that we're starting to have kids develop hand manipulation skills. Like I said, when they're reading a book, they can point at all the different pictures and the things that they like. You can talk about colors and point to the things that are pink, point to the things that are blue. They can start to hold smaller objects in their hands. Snacks, break them into small pieces like Cheerios or cereals, so they start to develop smaller grasp patterns. They should be able to turn the lights on and off, and it might be something they want to do all the time. You should also be able to start to see them turn the knob to open up the door. They are starting to begin some hand dominance. So you may start to see that they're using one hand more often to the other. And many times at that age, first it's the right hand that they're using a little more often, then they might be using the left hand a little bit more often, and then maybe they'll settle in and use the right hand more permanently. But you may switch, even though they're using one hand more often, you may see that switching is still occurring. They may have a better opportunity at grasping thick crayons or markers versus those thin crayons and markers at this age. Gross motor skills are really developing between 2 and 3 as well. Your kids are going to start to develop the ability to jump. They might want to experience things like jumping off the curb. To get something slightly out of the reach, they might go up on those tippy toes. They're moving forward and backwards within their play. They're developing the ability to run, and they're running with more confidence. It's more coordinated. It's not, they're not worried about their balance quite as much. They're not stumbling quite as much as they used to when they're running around. So you should see more fluidity while they're running and not falling frequently as they run across the playground. And they really should be enjoying running at this stage. This is a time, especially this time of year, to take them out to playgrounds, start practicing going up and down steps within playground slides, going down the slide with you, running across the playground, racing with you. There are fun ways to develop some of these gross motor skills with mommies and daddies. And they should be able to go from the floor to standing without using their hands now, because they have a lot more stability within their trunk and their core. And they develop the ability to go upstairs, and they may not even need to hold on anymore. That's a scary time for parents, because they want to be independent and do it all by themselves, but you're still a little worried that they might fall. But you start to see between 2 and 3 that they are gaining that independence and don't necessarily need to hold on. And they start to use one foot and then the other to go up those stairs.
The social and emotional skills of a toddler is like a roller coaster. They're trying to figure out how to manage and control their own behaviors and emotions. At this age, they're starting to interpret basic emotions of happy, sad, and mad from your reactions to situations and use these feeling words in these specific situations so they can continue to understand how you feel and how they are feeling. Like we said earlier, they're going to defend their possessions, their toys, but they're also going to learn how to share and take turns. This is the time they're going to start to be a little bit more social and really enjoy playing with friends. Summer's a great time to begin these social interactions by being outside with your children. Like Sandy said, take them to the park, have them take turns on the swing or on the slide. They're going to continue to be shy with strangers, and these temper outbursts are going to continue. Take pride in their achievements, call grandma and grandpop and tell them what they did so they can see that you're proud of them as well. They're going to cope with rules of the house.
And this is the time you as a parent can really show them exaggerated expressions so they know whether you're mad or whether you're happy or whether you're sad by what they do. They're starting to learn to take and understand your feelings, so their feelings and interactions are starting to change based on how you react to a situation.
Our 2 to 3 year olds' language are beginning to emerge a little bit more and more. They're definitely going to know their age. They might be able to verbally tell you and show you with their fingers. They're starting to use 2 to 4 word phrases to comment, refuse, and request. They're going to start to match items. Memory is a really good game to play with them in a modified way. Maybe put 6 to 8 cards out first, see if they can match them. Their play is beginning to emerge as well. They're going to engage in pretend play. They may pretend to cook in a play kitchen or with empty pots and pans. They're going to start to understand the concepts of one and all. And they're going to start to answer more abstract questions like where? Where's your toy? Where's daddy?
We're having some technical difficulties. There we go. Sorry about that. So as we move on to ages 4 and 5, you're going to see that kids are starting to build more and more skills. They're going to request permission before they do things. Mom, can I have a lollipop? Before they just go ahead and take one. You're going to start to see that they're role playing. When you're cooking dinner, they might be cooking dinner. So allow them to get some pots and pans out of the cabinets so that they can cook dinner too. Let them help you do the dishes after dinner. Let them help you load the dishwasher or load the washing machine. This is how kids are starting to learn those skills. They use language for jokes and they start teasing and they start playing more effectively with other children. Less temper tantrums, less disorganized play. You see that they share, they take turns, and enjoy being with friends. They're following simple rules and directions, and they may even start to apologize when they've hurt a friend's feelings. And they can show that empathy when they know that somebody else is sad. And you may say that they actually get sad when other people are sad. Now, between 4 and 5, we should start to see some self-control over their own anger and disappointment. They should be able to do what we call regulate their emotions a little bit more. When they do a temper tantrum, they should be able to end it quicker and be more independent in that and not need an adult's assistance to be able to calm themselves. Again, they're still taking pride in their work, so keep hanging it all throughout the house. And they're becoming more and more timid with strangers because they're understanding concepts about strangers. Our fine motor skills are also starting to really develop between ages 4 and 5. They can look at books more independently because now they can turn the pages of the books. They don't necessarily have to be the hardbound books. They can be the paper pages. They can start to squeeze Play-Doh, pull it apart. They can do screws, both unscrew it and re-screw it. So if they're little boys and they want to imitate daddy, this is a great thing that they could do, put nuts and bolts together. They can start to unscrew jar lids, so be careful what you have around the house because this is the time they may get into things that previously they did not get into. They start to do finger plays while they're singing. So songs like Itsy Bitsy Spider, things like Five Little Monkeys, have them sing along and do those hand skills with you. That is a great way to learn hand manipulation skills and to develop those muscles of the hand. They can do things like unlatch your gait. They're starting to copy straight lines and circles. They can do things like string beads. So they're holding the bead with one hand and pushing the string through with another. They should be able to build towers with blocks up to 8 blocks high. And they can use simple art materials, start gluing things. It's time to bring out those scissors. You might want to see that they can roll Play-Doh into a snake or into little balls to make a snowman. And they want to maybe use cookie cutters with their Play-Doh. They might want to use scissors with their Play-Doh, and you'll see that their play with that Play-Doh is becoming more like cooking, and a lot of imagination is used when they're using that Play-Doh. They're using their fingers to show their age, and their sister's age. So 3 is actually one of the hardest numbers to show, but they should be able to do that now. They're starting to color in the lines a little bit more closely. So when they're coloring, it's not just scribble all over the page, but you're starting to see that they have smaller strokes and they're understanding the boundaries of the lines on that coloring page. They might be able to trace around a template, and they can start to draw intersecting lines and go from one side to the other. They begin to copy some of the letters, usually the letters that they're most familiar with in their name, and they can cut a piece of paper in half now. Right here is a video of a little guy starting to work on some of his handwriting skills. This is something typical that we would do inside a therapy session to help develop those skills. Now, one of the things that you see with this little guy is his face is super close to that page. So that's one of the things that is problematic, is he really needs to be close to see what he's seeing. And you'll see the therapist is giving a little bit of hand-over-hand assistance to help guide him within his letter. Okay, let's click on forward. All right. As far as our gross motor skills, kids are becoming a lot more active, and it certainly is really important that they are active, because as they get ready to go to nursery school and kindergarten, they have to be able to move at some other point. Kids are really required to sit for much longer periods than they did in generations past. And what we see in today's society is they're really getting less and less opportunities to go outside, and this is really an important skill. So they're starting to run, moving arms back and forth. They're developing that ability to stop and start on command. Games like green light, red light are a lot of fun at this age because they're starting to figure out how they can stop at a dime. They develop the ability to walk up and down up the stairs, and this, now they really aren't holding on. They've got lots of control. They're able to walk backwards at this point and show you a lot of different kinds of maneuvers, and they're developing the ability to hop on one foot. So games like hopscotch are something they can start to play. They're really showing their independence at 4 and 5. They're becoming toilet trained. They should be pretty much toilet trained by age 4. They're assisting with brushing their teeth. They're assisting with dressing, doing more and more of those components. They may not be able to button yet. They may not be able to tie their shoes, but they should be able to do most of the other skills. Undressing at night before bed, putting their shoes on the correct feet is something that should start to emerge between 4 and 5. They should be using a fork and spoon at dinner time appropriately. They're still using their hands some of the time, but we should get those forks and spoons ready for them because they can be able to use them and control the food without spilling it. They may be able to pour small amounts of liquid into a cup. And this is a fun summer activity, is to work on that pouring. Get a big old jug, let them pour with the water out on the deck or out on the patio. And that's not a problem for anybody because spills can occur without a problem. They should be able to wipe and blow their nose and understand how to blow that air out so that they can blow their nose. They may be eliminating their naps at this time, but you want to make sure they get lots of sleep. 10 hours of sleep is really important for them to have a good day. And you may want to see that your child wants to help others and help you with chores around the house. It's a great way for them to learn.
The language of a 4 and 5-year-old is emerging just like all their other skills. They're understanding what objects are used for and understanding the function of an object. So, for example, what do you do with soap? They're going to know that you wash your body or your hands with soap. They're using expression and emotion when playing. They're understanding past events like yesterday or future events like tomorrow in their conversation. They're starting to add S to a word to show that there is more than one of an item, like dogs, planes, toys. They're using more and more complex sentences. So this example here, I'm going to McDonald's with Grammy and Pop Pop today. There's a lot of information in just this one sentence. They're able to answer how many and when questions, and they can start to state similarities and differences between objects. In this treatment session, the therapist is going to go into ask why questions. So a why question is an open-ended question, and it leaves the child to interpretation. And he's also describing the function of an object. So this is a really abstract concept for children to understand. In this slide, you'll see a range of numbers between 3 and 8. These numbers represent ages, and in each number is a variety of different sounds a child should acquire or be able to produce by that age. So if you see in number 3, M, W, H, B, and P, by age 3, your child should be able to produce these sounds. Looking at patterns of articulation, children may simplify patterns of articulation, and this is called a phonological process. This includes the following. A child may delete a final sound. So for an example, they may say cat for cat. See how they're leaving off that final T sound. They may omit one or more syllables in a multisyllabic word. Instead of saying computer, they may say pooter. Of course, it's super cute, but as they get to be a little bit older, 4 or 5, they start to lose a little bit of their clarity in their speech. Children may also leave off the initial sound of a word. So instead of saying bat, they may say at. They left off the B in that word. Children may also display something in the speech world is called stopping. They shorten a sound that may be produced longer. So for instance, instead of saying sun, they kind of make it very short and say done. The difference between sun and done. Instead of making the S super long, they're chopping it and making it shorter with a D. They also may exhibit fronting. This is when so we have certain sounds that are made in the front of the mouth and sounds that are made in the back of the mouth. So for instance, in fronting, a child may say tup instead of cup. A T is made in the front of your mouth. You see how your tongue, if you try to say it, your tongue goes up in the front of your mouth. And when you say the k in cup, it's in the back of your throat. So for this instance, we see a lot of kiddos that come in that are actually making this error, and they're doing that tup for cup. As your child starts to become of the age of between 4 and 6 years old, their way of thinking is way higher level than they were in the past couple years. They're going to start to develop theory of mind or social intelligence. They're going to start to understand that they are not the center of the universe. They're going to realize that others have needs and wants, and other people have points of views and their own plans and their own thoughts. This is crucial for everyday social interactions and is used when analyzing and judging and inferring about behaviors, especially when they start to go into school.
It can also delay that personal gratification to meet somebody else's needs. And that's a really important skill for your child to learn, being able to wait their turn, being able to wait while you're talking to another adult. And they should be able to do that without looking at your iPhone. And they should be able to do that just sitting and waiting. And that's a skill that a lot of times we shove that iPhone in front of them in order to keep them quiet or allow them to wait. but we really need to be able to teach our children how to wait without their devices, to develop those skills, because by the time they get to kindergarten, they need to be able to just stand in line and wait to get ready to go to music, or wait their turn until their teacher gives them their piece of paper. So it's an important skill for your child to be able to learn. When should your child learn to write? It happens a lot earlier than you would think. By 4 years, 4 months, we should really be able to intersect lines. Intersecting lines gives us the starting point for many other letters, such as H, T, I. So those letters are much easier for kids and come at an earlier year. By 4 years, 6 months, your children should be able to do a square. A triangle is a little later because those diagonal lines are really hard to get. So that's usually around 5 years, 3 months. Obliques, like a cross, happens a little bit earlier, but those diagonal lines are still can be more difficult for some children. So around 4 years, 11 months is when you see those diagonal lines occur. By 4 years old, they're mostly coloring in the lines now within the picture. We call deviations over the lines, and there should only be like 1, 2, 3 lines that are going outside the perimeter of the boundaries. And they should be able to start to print their own name by 5 years old. I know in our area, which is southeastern Pennsylvania, where TheraPlay corporate is located, many children are asked to write their name in preschool, and we see a lot of children making these accomplishments by age 4. If your child is struggling in preschool, know that 5 years old is really when they should have it down. But if they're starting to struggle, that's when you might want to start to reach out and get some help. They should start to be able to draw a person, and we want to see that they know their body parts and that they can represent 6 plus body parts. You may see initially that your child draws a picture with the face and the arms and legs coming out of the head. That's typical. They don't really see that the body is part of the whole rest of the person until a little bit later. So initially those 6 parts might be the head, the arms, the legs, eyes, a mouth, a nose. And then as they get more skilled, you're going to see that they add hands, they might add hair, kids might add clothing like dresses and pants. And then as they develop skills even further, now their people are doing things. They're kicking a soccer ball into the net, they're at school, sitting at their desk. So that's really how some of those skills emerge. So what should your child's grip look like? So the first picture is what we call a tripod grasp. And the person holding this pen actually has what we call a hyperextended digit at the end. So you see from her knuckle down to the tip of her fingernail, she is more extended. We would like to see that that's actually a little bit more flexed. But this grip where it's hyperextended like that is actually very fine. Many kids start out with the next grasp, and that's called a fisted grasp, and all kids start there, but we would want them to start to turn around a little bit later. The following grasp is something called a tower grasp. This grasp is indicative of poor hand strength, and one of the things that we would want to see is that pencil that seems to be vertical should actually rest down between the index finger and the thumb. We call that the thumb web space, and that helps a child gain improved control of their writing tool. When they use a tower grasp, frequently they get tired. You might see them switch hands because of fatigue, and they might not have the precision that they need because they're really holding that pencil far away from their hand and not gaining the support. The last slide represents what we call the rubber band trick. And what we did is we put a rubber band around, this is a therapist, but we put it around the children's wrist, and then we twist it one time and put the other side of the rubber band around the pencil. So basically the rubber band now looks like an 8, and it gives a nice force on the pencil to pull it back towards the wrist so that we can get that child's pencil back where it needs to be and start to develop precision and strength with that hand. So One of the other things that you could do to help a child's grasp if they're really having trouble transitioning from that fisted grasp into that tripod grasp is use a technique called pinch and flip. So in the first slide, you see that the person is pinching the tip of the pencil with their index finger and their thumb. Then they take their other hand to the other end of the pencil and they start to push it back towards the original hand holding the pencil. Pushes it all the way back so that it's now resting into the thumb web space. And now the child is ready to write with a tripod grasp. Activities that promote more mature grasp patterns is to color with broken crayons. I think everybody likes to get those brand new crayons, but those short, fat, broken crayons, broken pieces of chalk are really much more effective. Things like picking up small objects with tweezers. They can pick up Cheerios, pennies, macaroni. Using tweezers is a great way for kids to develop hand strength and grasp. And if anybody ever has a restaurant near them that uses tweezers or Chinese chopsticks, many times for children they have tweezers and they'll allow you to take them home. Play board games with small pieces. That also really helps you develop your child's grip and hand skills. Use the rubber band trick, and then holding a penny or a sponge with their little finger and their ring finger while they're grabbing their pencil is a way to help them only use their first three fingers within that grip. And again, we talked about that pinch or flip technique. And we talked a little bit before about when should your child play with scissors. I mean, that's a really hard thing to think about. You don't want them cutting their hair. I know my own daughter did that because I gave her scissors when she was about 2. I walked away for a second and her hair was cut. So unfortunately, it happened about 2 weeks before Christmas. So our Christmas card that year has lopsided hair. So I definitely think that you should try to avoid that. But you do want to give kids and expose them to scissors in a supervised fashion by age 4. By age 4, their hands are large enough to use a small pair of scissors, and they should be able to hold the paper with their opposite hand to start stabilizing it so they can start to cut that piece of paper in half. Activities and games that promote hand development are something that are easy to do, fun to play with your kids. So we already talked about the value of Play-Doh. Another activity is using stamps to develop collages or pictures or frames around pictures that they've colored, stringing beads, stringing macaroni, stringing basically anything that has a hole can be a lot of fun for your kids. Do finger plays, use finger puppets, create them with your gloves that have holes in them. Now you can make little finger puppets out of them and create stories and plays with those finger puppets. Any kind of game with a spinner is a great game to play to develop hand skills. Finger painting, toy pianos, older games like Jacks, Light Break, Operation are fantastic games for your kids to build skills. Newer games like Bed Bugs are a lot of fun for kids as well. And the oldies but goodies, Chinese checkers, kerplunk, color forms, dominoes, marbles, pick-up sticks, don't spill the beans are all fantastic games to develop those games. And don't forget bubbles. Popping bubbles with your index finger is a lot of fun for kids, and it's a great way to develop skills for their hand muscles and to develop skills for grasp patterns. In kindergarten, your kids are going to start to read. It's amazing how fast they need to know their letters and their sounds and put words together to read. You're going to see them do things like match letters in large groups of letters. They should be able to follow a moving object with their eyes. That starts to allow them to help read across the page from left to right. They should be able to visually locate items from a verbal cue. Even as early as preschool, kids have worksheets, and they need to be able to visually locate things on the worksheet so they know where, what they need to copy and what they need to cut out. They're going to need to be able to reproduce colors, shapes, sequences. In early math, they call them AB sequences and ABC sequences, where they have to do a red bead, a blue bead, an orange bead, and repeat it, a red bead, a blue bead, an orange bead. So learning these skills by kindergarten gives them a leg up in developing and understanding simple math and building words. They're going to start to need to know the names of their letters and the names of their sounds by kindergarten. And to be able to arrange 3 simple pictures in a correct sequence. Activities that they should be able to do by kindergarten. Now they should be able to skip out on that playground, gallop like a horse, hop on one leg. They should be able to stand on that leg for 10 seconds or more. They're starting to put their skills together to do jumping jacks and catch balls. We also need to build a lot of visual skills for reading. Matching, sorting, and labeling things really help kids build the skills that they need for reading. Picture matching games like Lotto, Snap, and Dominoes are great ways to build skills for reading. Matching objects to outlines that are drawn. That's another great way to build skills. That's a skill called visual closure, and that's understanding parts of a whole. They need to be able to do some pattern making, and you can do that using pegboards. We talked about beads earlier. Pictures requiring the child to find what's wrong. There's some great websites. Highlights for Kids. .com is a great website where you can find what's wrong pictures. They also have the Highlights magazines that have what's wrong in them. You can Google the words what's wrong pictures and come up with a whole bunch of sites that can help your kids figure out what's wrong. And a lot of times there's silly things in the pictures, and they're easy to spot. And if your child's having some trouble with that, that's an indicator that they may have some difficulty with reading. They should be able to spot differences in those pictures. Again, Highlights for Kids is a great website for that. Playing memory games is great. You can do that with a regular deck of cards and start to, put 8 cards out, and can they find the matches? Can they remember where the 2 is after they flip one over and then the other? Find what's missing in the picture. Again, Highlights for Kids has these kinds of pictures as well. Your children should be able to start to do simple dot-to-dots, color by number pictures. They should be able to find hidden pictures, and they should be able to do a 24-piece puzzle.
Lastly, the language skills needed for kindergarten. Your child should be able to count to 10. They should be able to tell you and reflect about their day in a sequential order. So that meaning there should be a beginning, a middle, and an end. They're able to identify shapes, use 4 to 8 words in a sentence with the appropriate grammar. Everyone should be able to understand your child. So people that are around your child all the time, or even unfamiliar listeners. And like we said earlier, able to talk in a sequential order about their day. So what can you do? We gave you a lot of examples and a lot of information, and you have a question. So what can you do as a parent or a caregiver? Definitely talk to your pediatrician at their next well visit. I know Sandy has done it, and I've done it as well. Make a list for your healthcare provider. You can do it on your phone or on a piece of paper and write down all of your concerns and questions for them, and they'll direct you in the right direction. Or, of course, you can contact us with questions. If you live in Northern Virginia or the DC area, the Children's Therapy Center. You can contact TheraPlay Incorporated if you live in southeastern Pennsylvania and Delaware, or reach out to Positive Steps in Western Pennsylvania.
So why choose TheraPlay company, a family of companies? One, we give individualized treatment, which means when your child comes in, they'll see one therapist for an entire hour, and that's all we do. We play with your child. We have a multidisciplinary team at TheraPlay and the other companies that that service you. That means that we have an OT, a PT, and a speech therapist. So if you come in with initial concerns about occupational therapy skills, which would be your fine motor skills, those writing skills that we talked about, those hand strength skills, and we find that there might be some concerns in gross motor skills, we can just talk to a PT right there and start to answer some of your questions. That makes us a team-based approach because we're talking about your child. So if they have multiple concerns across areas, our therapists are talking to each other. We give you home exercise programs. So not only did we give you lots of activities today, we would give you more activities to do at home outside of the therapy session so that your child can build their skills. We try to work in a functional environment, and we use play in everything that we do, and we have many insurance options for you. Now, there may be a few questions out there. We have 1 or 2 minutes to be able to get the questions from you. So let's see what we've got. Hopefully there's a question or two here, and we can help you out. Okay, we've got our first question. Krista, can you read that question for us?
No, it was from earlier.
So again, we're having a few technical difficulties getting some of our questions up today. I don't know that anybody sent anything in. So hopefully we've answered every question that you might have had. Here we go. We got one. We just need to get it big enough for us to read. Takes a minute for us.
Right.
We're scrolling up so we can see the whole question. Unfortunately,
if someone cannot understand my child, should I step in as a translator?
So this is a speech-related question. So the question was, should I translate for my child if someone can't understand them? In my opinion, I really feel like you should let your child finish their thoughts. I think it's really super important for the child to feel confident in their language. Of course, if someone is still having trouble understanding them, you might want to ask them questions to help get to the answer. If you ask them an open-ended question or a closed-ended question, they can at least answer yes, no, or get a little bit a finer detail. There is going to be a link sent out regarding this webinar. So there will be a link that you can access through your email after the webinar is over.
TheraPlay have access to reference it.
We keep all of our websites on our main company drive. So if one of the therapists wants to look at the in-service, they can be granted permission to look at the in-service. Most of our therapists know this information pretty much cold because this is the information that we have been taught. But if they do want access to the webinar, they're more than happy to have it so they can answer your very specific questions that you might have about the webinar.
There's another question.
The skills mentioned for kindergarten, should you know these skills before kindergarten, or is the child expected to know by the end of kindergarten?
Most of the skills that we reviewed today, they should have by the time they start kindergarten. Kindergarten today happens really fast. So if they're not prepped with a lot of the skills that you saw in our webinar today, they may have some difficulty in kindergarten and may need some support systems once they get there. Do know, though, that it's the end of June, but summertime, these last 3 months, especially if you've got an August or September birthday, are a huge building time before kindergarten. And many kids gain quite a few skills in the 3 months prior to the start of kindergarten. But you should see many of the skills that we talked about are skills that they should have prior to the start of kindergarten. Okay, I think we have one more question. All right, nope, I guess these are just comments. So,
But should they be concerned about using older skill sets for older kids as opposed to using skill sets for younger kids?
okay. So if your child has more skills than we developed or that we talked about today, I think that's fine to continue to develop those skills and use older skills to continue to facilitate their skills. So if your child is able to have a tripod grasp at age 2.5, that's fantastic. If they've already developed hand dominance, that's fantastic. Just keep building those skills by giving them opportunities through their play. You're going to see many times, especially fine motor skills, girls are a little faster because they like to sit longer and actually participate in a lot of coloring skills. Boys tend to be a little bit slower to gain some of these skills, mainly because they don't sit and practice them as much as girls do. And so you see boys are more rough and tumble, and so those fine motor skills may not be as developed. So you want to maybe give your boys some opportunities to develop those skills.
Two more questions. Any recommended readings for families looking to use play in their homes to help their child with social and emotional development?
There are a couple of great sources of social emotional development. I would use a website and look at a speech therapist by the name of Michelle Garcia Winner. She put together a social thinking program called We Thinkers. It used to be called The Incredible Flexible You, and she has designed a whole group of books to help develop social emotional skills. She is fantastic.
It starts around age 3.
They start around age 3, and those books aren't very expensive, and you'll see that a lot of schools and speech therapists and occupational therapists use that social thinking curriculum as a foundation to start to build those skills. So it is really a fantastic group of skills. There's a book out there called Personal Space Camp. That is a fantastic book as well to teach kids personal space boundaries. Really, Personal Space Camp is the name of the book. Fantastic book.
The author, Michelle Garcia Winner.
Michelle Garcia Winner is the owner of the creator of the social thinking curriculum. She's fantastic. And Personal Space Camp, I know if you just Google the name of that, you'll come up with the author. I'm sorry, that's not coming to me right now.
Should my child be able to use regular scissors by kindergarten?
Yes, they should. They're not going to have specialized scissors in kindergarten class. They're going to have regular scissors in that classroom. If you do a Fiskar brand, it's Fiskar. They have rounded edges, but they tend to be a little sharper to help kids cut. If they're left-handed, you might want to look into left-handed scissors. Some kids have trouble just because they're left-handed and they're trying to use right-handed scissors. So you may want to look into that option if you have a left-handed child.
And Katie, yes, we can send out a list of the authors that Sandy mentioned with the link for the webinar, so don't worry about that.
Okay, great. So hopefully what I'll do is I'll put together a whole list of different books that are available beyond what we mentioned today, so that everybody who is watching the webinar today, that they will be able to have the list of books. So we will have that whole list for you of things that we use routinely in the clinic and things that are just out there that we recommend to parents. Okay?
Thank you so much for attending.
Great. Thanks for all the questions, everybody. Take care. Have a great day.